In this video, I want to talk a little bit about how fall cold fronts and fall cold snaps are different than those that we see in the springtime. Now, if you have been fishing for a long time, you probably understand this, but if you are relatively new to bass fishing, you may think that you do a lot of the similar things in the fall that you do in the spring. And to be honest, it's almost complete opposite for me. So in this video, we're going to talk about fall cold fronts. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. Right now, for the month of October 2024, I am running a package deal. You can get a USA made sun shirt, one of the only sun shirts made in the US, and a bass hat, which is complete with a wooden bass badge for $67. So you actually save quite a bit of money and you help support this channel. So it's real easy. All you got to do, add the sun shirt that you like to cart, add the hat that you like to cart. You will see that automatic discount at checkout. Thank you to all of you who have shopped at Fin Fishing in the past. I really appreciate it. All right, let's talk a little bit about fall cold fronts and cold snaps. And here where I live in Ohio, we're really kind of having one of these major cold fronts, and it's really one of the first major cold fronts of the year where it really brings the water temperature down. We've had some cold nights, but recently, like the last couple of nights, have been in the 30s, which is very cold, and it really brings that water temperature down. Now, like I said, in the springtime, a lot of times when we have these cold fronts, it can mean kind of bad news, if I'm being 100% honest. And the big thing that you got to think about is when fish are moving up in the spring, they are wanting to spawn. Their mind is on spawning. And in order for those fish to spawn, they really have to lay their eggs in kind of a certain water temperature. And they really want to have stable conditions. So when you have these springtime cold fronts come through where, you know, your water temperature may just about to hit 60 or 65 degrees, really kind of a prime spawning temperature, and then all of a sudden, bam, you have a cold snap, it drops 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees, it can really make the fishing tough. And it can, one of the biggest things that I always suggest when you have springtime cold fronts is to really slow down, because a lot of those fish are going to kind of remain up shallow and in some areas, but a lot of times they're going to back off a little bit. And I think that slow moving lures that are really close to pieces of cover, maybe that's wood cover, wherever, whatever it may be, is one of the best things that you can do to catch those fish in the spring. Now in the fall, to me, cold snaps kind of do the opposite. And what I mean by that is, instead of backing these fish off, I have seen on a number of different fisheries where fish will actually start flooding the shallows. They will actually start moving shallower and starting to feed up for the winter time. And so in the fall, it can almost be the exact opposite. Instead of slowing down, a lot of times what I like to do is use a lot of moving lures. You know, in the fall, there's so many different baits that you can throw. You know, spinner bait is a great one. Square bills are a great one. But I actually just went yesterday. So yesterday morning, I went to a lake that I hadn't been to in over 2 years. And I got there and the air temperature was like 46 degrees. It had been 30, I think 9 at night. And that water temp, I'm assuming, had dropped probably fairly significantly overnight. Because I hadn't been there in so long, I don't know what it was prior to that, but I'm guessing it dropped. And so what I ended up doing is I actually ended up picking up a buzz bait. And I know that a lot of people aren't going to think about throwing a buzz bait in cold weather like that. And I'm telling you what, in the fall, it's just different. So far, really, as I was saying it, oh, that's a good one too. Oh, dude, man, they are getting it good. And you can pick up a buzzbait, you can pick up faster moving lures, cover a lot of water, and catch a lot of bass. And that's actually what ended up happening. Now, I actually made a full video of that particular day that I'm going to, actually it's currently live over on BassFishingHQ, so I will link it at the end of this video. But I do want to tell you that sometimes sometimes it does get too cold for a topwater bite. In this video that I was just talking about, or yesterday when I was out there fishing, it wasn't too cold. I could go down, I was catching a lot of fish on a topwater, on a buzzbait, having a good time, but you can get into times of the year where it does become a little bit too cold for the buzzbait or too cold for a topwater bait. But sometimes you can still catch them on fast moving lures in shallow water. So I think there's just a switch at times where bass just don't want to hit something that's on top. And so instead of using a topwater, maybe you're going to use a spinnerbait in a lot of those exact same areas. And even though it seems like those bass should have no problem hitting a topwater, it just seems like there is a switch. So the one thing that I always suggest, cover a lot of water, go to the shallow waters, because in the fall, those cold snaps, those cold fronts really mean a lot of fish that are up shallow and they are feeding. The fish know what is happening, especially if you live in the, kind of the Midwest, the northern part of the country where a lot of our lakes freeze over. These fish are fairly used to cold water. They are cold water fish. And so when you have these cold snaps, it really is just, to me, it is a signal where they think, man, it is time to start feeding up. And so you'd be shocked because sometimes you'll go out there and, for example, yesterday it was sleeting. It started sleeting in the middle of the day, and I've been days out there where it starts to snow, and you wouldn't think to pick up fast lures, you wouldn't think to pick up topwater lures, and I'm telling you what, it absolutely can be one of the best things to do. And I'll tell you one thing real quick. A number of years ago, this was back in 2020, I fished a tournament on Lay Lake down in Alabama. And I fished it, it was like a November Bassmaster Open, and I did pretty poorly in the tournament. But one thing that I learned, one thing that I totally missed in that tournament was the spotted bass in that lake were hitting topwaters, and that water temp was like 48 to 51 pretty much anywhere you went. And they were hitting topwaters really good. And it was something that I completely overlooked because we had a few nights, like we woke up the one morning and my graphs were frozen, my lids were pretty much frozen shut. You wouldn't think that a topwater, a fast lure would do any good. But in the fall, it simply means something different. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you remember to hit the shallows when this cold weather kind of comes through, because I'm telling you what, it can be some of the most fun fishing you will experience. Now, if you want to watch that video that I just talked about, where I went out there throwing the buzzbait pretty much for about 4 or 5 hours, I'm going to leave it linked right here. It's a fun video, and it's a little bit different than some of my Bass Fishing HQ videos, so I'd love to hear your guys' input on it as well. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this one. I will see you tomorrow.